Hello and welcome to today's episode of Comms Business Live, where we'll be looking at the evolving cloud communications market. I'm Charlotte, editor of Comms Business, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jamie Hughes, Sales Director for the UK at Evolve IP. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Charlotte. Hi, everyone.
And welcome back as well, because we caught up with Jamie a few months ago. So the cloud communications market is evolving all the time. So what key developments would you say happened in 2024?
I like that you say evolving when we're on an Evolve channel. So the big discussion from last year, from our perspective, with talking to partners and also prospective partners, is a lot around doing the cost of doing business rather than the cost of doing sale. And I think we obviously talk to our partners around that, but they should also be talking to their customers about that as well. And the reason why I say that is where the market is. The market's kind of plateaued at you can have a service and you're paying a reasonable low value for that service, and but when you sell that service, there can come quite a lot of administrative costs associated with it. So it could be a case of, right, you need to go into multiple portals, or you need to do a manual process for porting, or you need to do manual process for hardware, and those kind of things. And that's the hidden cost of doing business, and people forget that. So whilst people are driving down or looking to drive down the cost of business, we kind of say, well, actually, there's a cost of doing business, and the license is obviously a product, but you need to look at the bigger picture. So when our partners speak to their customers, they need to be having the same conversation, really, is, well, the cost of doing business, yes, it might be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pound that they're buying per license, but what does their customer want to do with that license? Do they want to integrate with that license? Do they have open APIs? Can they get some developers in there? And actually, when you're having that conversation, the cost of doing business, consuming that product, can actually become a lot more cost effective for them, rather than I'm buying it for £8, but then I can't integrate it into the rest of my business, and therefore there's that hidden cost associated with that transaction. And also, I think people forget about, actually, there's an expectation to be a highly resilient platform, whereas we still hear around providers having issues with the uptime and having multiple hours or even days of outages. And in our world, we just expect it to work. And one of the nice things from an Evolve perspective is we have had no downtime from a platform point of view in over 7 years. So that's a big part of what we see, but also the emergence of Teams native solutions. What I mean by that is, natively is we're a Cisco core platform, but what we're seeing is actually people want to utilize Teams. So if they're going down the Operator Connect route, then what they potentially want to do is they want to have Teams recording for meetings, or they might want reporting from within the Teams tenant, rather than utilising the Cisco platform for things like direct routing. So we're seeing it's on early stages, but we're seeing more of a requirement for that, where customers actually, they don't want to go to the MSP and actually have the MSP manage it for them. Actually, the customers want to do that. And I think that's probably going into 2025, probably one of the biggest emergencies that we'll see this year, which I think there's a question later on about that as well.
Yeah, so that's probably a good place for us to ask what you might say was kind of the highlight of the last year.
So from our point of view, we had there was quite a number. So we ended the year with doing an NPS survey with our partners. We had, if I remember, I think it was over 80, possibly 90 responses, and we had a score of 8.83. Which is our highest yet out of all of the responses that we had. And I think that's just testament to what we're doing. It kind of highlights that we're doing a good job. We're servicing our partners. The multiple questions that we have is across our whole business, as an NPS should be. And we were really proud of that score. It means a lot to us to get that feedback, but also is we ask for feedback around how we can improve that, because we always got to look ahead and make sure that come November, December this year, not next year, is that we're even greater. So I think that was a real highlight for us, and we had a fantastic partner day. So I think we had things that contributed towards that NPS. So we had a fantastic partner day which we held at Williams. We're just about to secure our partner day venue for this year. I won't tell you where that is, but it's a really exciting venue. We had over 130 attendees for our partner day. We had all of our technology partners join us for the event. So that was a real highlight for us. What we also had is vertical growth. So people kind of know Evolve IP really as the vertical specialist, but also the international player. So we had we kind of couple up some of our verticals into hospitality, retail. We've got education, and then also what we call professional services. So that's the finance, legal sector. In retail, we grew 24%. Hospitality, we grew 12%. Education 21% and 9% in professional services, and this is kind of testament to all the work that we've been doing in these spaces. So education has been a big driver for us, especially around the colleges and universities and some of the functionality that's required in order to deliver that. Retail has been massive for us over, I'd probably say, over the last 3 or 4 years, really, but it spiked this year, especially where we start talking into things like headsets and touch points. So that click and collect touch point, where you press that button, it gets communicated into a headset, and driving that as a solution rather than having these just as kind of bolt-ons or add-ons, really. So that was a big push for us. Also our core, which is obviously Cisco, we're now at 50, or it's just gone over 57,000 this month, but at the end of last year we were at 56,000 WebEx licenses. So again, it just shows that people are starting to move to collaboration, and they're starting to utilize some of the functionality that WebEx can offer. So things like the AI tools that's embedded into the product, and Vidcast and Slido tools as well. And then international presence, we added a few more countries to our international scale. So we're now live in 57 countries, as opposed to the 53 or 54 that we had at the beginning of 2024.
Nice. So growth in all areas must be nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So with so much change in recent years, from those developments you just mentioned through to kind of how the market more broadly is evolving, as we touched on in that first question, who would you say are the key technology companies to keep an eye on? So
I think WebEx has been probably the one focus for us. And when there's a marketplace that's so heavily kind of pushing the Microsoft team, the Microsoft route and teams, it's good to have obviously a comparable. So with WebEx, we've been pushing that. We do have our Teams offering as well, but WebEx has been a big driver. They've been putting a lot of development into their solutions. So things around using kind of AI codecs. So if you're in an area that's maybe got not the bandwidth, then it uses AI to optimize it, so for the clarity of the call, and then also some of the functionality that's in there as well. So WebEx are pushing very heavily into that space, and I do see them as a competitor of Teams, and people should look at it as an alternative, and not necessarily just go down the Teams route for the ease of doing so. So I think WebEx is a big one, and we've seen some of their roadmap, which is really quite exciting. I think another one for us is FMC. So the Nordics, also kind of the southern region of Europe, FSC is quite highly adopted, and that's predominantly being picked up by the mobile operators like Telefonica, and we're seeing that actually this is going to be a big thing for 2025. I think on a Cavell report as well, they listed as FMC as being a bigger adoption this year, a bigger focus, and collapsing the technologies. So FMCs, we've started seeing a bit of an upturn on the FMC solution. So I think that's a big one. And then also the AI story in general, really. Yeah. So we've got a couple of AI products, so IVR and call recording, which uses AI products. And what we're seeing now is actually people are starting to feed the AI engine in order to optimize them and get them to be more efficient. So I think that's a big part of the technologies that we see for 2025 and our ecosystem.
Definitely. So obviously AI is going to be a key part of the conversation, but what else do you kind of see on the horizon for the cloud communications market?
So I mentioned around the Teams native solutions. So one of the key things from our side is a customer will move from one technology to another. But I think one of the things that partners have potentially got to look at is when a customer wants to go from one technology to another, is that you don't want to kind of go from one platform to another platform because it's quite disruptive for the customer. So from us is actually a platform that is agnostic, and you can move from one device to another device, a click of the button by changing a license as opposed to changing that. So I think that the ease of use is one thing. I think also the regulatory, again, because we're an international business, the regulatory landscape is also changing. So we are now certified in France. We're regulated in France. We're regulated in Spain to provide service. We've just put our application in for Portugal. We're just going through the process of Italy. We're again going through the process of Singapore, and these are all countries that has a lot of time, expense, and understanding in order to be compliant in these countries. We found out just only yesterday that come at the end of Q2, Belgium will be on that list, so we will have to be regulated in Belgium. And we are a forward-thinking business. It's not a case that we go, right, we'll wait for an opportunity, or we'll wait till we have to be regulated. We've already started that process on the back of the conversation yesterday. So I think that's the regulatory landscape is definitely one of the big challenges. But what we're also doing is we're looking at ways actually how we can potentially bring your own carrier as an example. So where there's countries where we can't provide service because the regulation is just so strict, and you need a physical office and so on, is we are looking at ways where potentially the reseller can, or the end customer can bring their own carrier, again, to break down those barriers and provide a global service.
And what do kind of all of those developments you've mentioned, what does that all mean for your reselling partners?
So really, I think it's just that Evolve IP is committed to serving our partners and kind of breaking down those barriers and just making ourselves easy to work with. I think that's really, I think we're a forward-thinking business, so I think that's key.
Absolutely. And what is kind of the one key takeaway you'd like people to take away from this conversation? Is it just about kind of keeping an eye on the market, or kind of keeping pace with things, or is it kind of something else?
I think it's around backing the right service provider. So we know there's 108 service providers. There's talk of some service providers potentially collapsing their network and reselling other platforms. So I think it is around backing the right service provider, the service provider that's still innovating, still growing, still to its core cares about the partner and their customer as well. And I think this year, so it's about investing in the partner as well. So one of the things that we're doing very early on this year, so in January and early Feb, is working with the likes of Cavell and giving our partners an insight into the market research that's going on. I don't think there's many providers that do that. I think also we're now doing quarterly roadmap sessions, so our partners know what journey we're on, and also kind of feeding back to us what we should be doing. So I think if the service provider that the audience is working with today, I'd kind of question them and go, is this the right service partner for me today, tomorrow, and in the future? And if not, let's have a conversation around potentially being a partner of yours.
Absolutely. So that does bring us to the end of this episode of Comms Business Live. Thanks, Jamie, for sharing those thoughts with us.
Thank you, Charlotte.
As we've heard, cloud communications is a fast-paced industry, but resellers and MSPs can succeed with the right partner by their side. If anyone watching would like to follow up with Jamie and the Evolve IP team, there's some links in the video description to point you in the right direction. But otherwise, thanks everyone for joining us, and goodbye.